Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds, and sending peace and blessings upon the final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to Faith Unlocked, a new show post-Ramadan, a fortnightly show where we discuss daily life, faith, spirituality, and community affairs, and each episode is hosted by myself, Junaid Ahmed, and my co-host and our resident Shaykh Shafiur Rahman. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Shafi.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. And one of the things that we have in this show, just like we had during the month of Ramadan for the Ramadan Unlock show, is that we have a special guest joining us for each of the shows. And alhamdulillah, this week we have with us a very, very special guest, and that is Imam Siraj Wahhaj, all the way from New York. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Siraj.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Good to see you again.
It's a real honor to have you on board with us for this show. Jazakumullah khairan for giving up your time to be with us.
It is my absolute pleasure and my honor.
Alhamdulillah. So, brothers and sisters, over the next hour, we'll be engaging in a conversation and discussion with Imam Siraj, and the focus of our discussion today will be around social justice issues because of what we are seeing in USA in particular, as well as in other parts of the world. In UK, we're also seeing a lot of demonstrations and concerns raised about this issue of race and injustice that is happening, and this is something that we're going to be exploring with Imam Siraj Wahhaj and Shaykh Shafiur Rahman. But we will also be kind of extending our discussion to some of the wider topics of social activism, da'wah, engaging in society and serving the community, something that Imam Siraj Wahhaj has been dedicating his life to for over 40 years. And alhamdulillah, it's a real honor and pleasure to have him with us today in this show. If you have any comments, any questions for Imam Siraj Wahhaj, please post it in the comment section. We will be looking at some of those and inshallah trying to pose some of those questions to Imam Siraj. For those of you who are not familiar with Imam Siraj, which I guess won't be many out there at all, Imam Siraj Wahhaj is a globally recognized Islamic leader of the Muslim community, alhamdulillah. He's the Imam of Masjid in New York. He's a da'i, he's a lecturer, community activist. He's been in the leadership, and he still is in the leadership of almost all of the Muslim organizations in the US, from Muslim Alliance in North America to ISNA, ICNA, MUNA, MSA, all of these organizations. Alhamdulillah, he's often referred to as the Imam of Da'wah in the West. Alhamdulillah. With over 40 years of experience in Da'wah and community service, sharing his message and inspiring so many people. Anyone who has been in the West, in the Islamic scene and in community organizations would have grown up learning and being inspired by Imam Siraj. So he's our Murabbi, he's our leader, and our great to have him with us. So Imam Siraj, first of all, how are you?
Very good, and very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, Muawiyah, one of the companions, said, La hakima illa dhu tajriba. There's no real wisdom experience. And a lot of experiences, alhamdulillah, some of that maybe we'll share today, and some of my own background in becoming a Muslim. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life is the day I became Muslim. And there's nothing in my life that comes close to that. One of the great joys of my life is when I married my wife. That was a big joy and happiness to me. But the biggest, you can't even compare, is the day I became Muslim. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And just for our viewers, when was that? And you might as well share that experience with us briefly to start us off.
I have two answers for that, right? when I was a student at New York University, at 1968 is the time that I joined the then called Nation of Islam. So 1968, I joined, 68, 69, I joined the Nation of Islam. But in 1975 is when I really became a Muslim, what one would call Orthodox Muslim, or following the practice of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. So take your choice. You say 1968 or 1975. I leave it up to you.
Alhamdulillah. Imam Siraj, there's so much to discuss with you, but due to the current climate and what we're witnessing around us, let us first of all begin with this issue around social justice. You have been at the forefront in the fight and struggle for social justice and anti-racism causes in the US right from the beginning. So we just wanted to start off by asking you to share your reflection and your thoughts on what we have been witnessing in the US with the killing and the tragic murder of George Floyd.
You know, really, that's really a great question. I want to first give you some background. I think it's important that people have some background, a little bit of history. And I know that there's some Muslims who don't watch movies, but if they were inclined to see a movie, I would tell them two movies to see. One of them is called 12 Angry Jurors. 12 Angry Jurors. It came out in 1956. And the entire movie is about 12 jurors and in a deliberation room. That's where the whole movie took place. There's no names. You have juror number 1, number 2, up until number 12. And they have to deliberate about a inner city youth who was charged with murder. In the beginning of the movie, like everybody, oh, he's guilty. We don't even have to spend any time. He's guilty. So I would recommend people to watch that movie, 1956. And have you ever heard of Spike Lee?
Yeah.
Heard of him, Imam, right? And he's a great producer, African-American producer. Someone asked him, what makes a movie great? And he said, what makes a movie great is 3 things. Number 1, it should be entertaining. Number 2, it should be educational. And number 3, it should be inspirational. So these are the 3 things that you should have. The next movie came out last year. It's called Just Mercy. Fantastic movie. It's a true story based on a lawyer who was fighting for an innocent African-American man from Alabama. So when you study these movies, you learned a little bit about the history. We should ask ourselves the question, what's going on? Why people all over the world is concerned about the murder of George Floyd? Because there's been a lot of Black people murdered. What makes this one so special that all over America and all over the world, people protested? Here's a man that the only people knew him, his friends and his family. Now all over the world, everybody's saying the name George Floyd. Why? And the best thing I can say is like this. People say, seeing is believing. And I want to go back again. I maybe take about 2 or 3 minutes if you will permit me.
Yeah, absolutely.
In 1965, one of the turning points of the Black movement in the United States happened in Alabama. It was a famous march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery. And it was March 7th, 1965. And it started out with 600 African Americans. And why were they marching? Because Black people, although they were citizens, and although they had the right to vote, but every time they came to vote, they had to take a literacy test. And so, Junaid,
yep.
Can I see you for a second? I'm gonna give you an opportunity. Where are you? I want to see you. I want to look at your face when I ask you this question.
You can see me?
I want to look. Yeah, now I can see you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you some money. I'm gonna give you some money right now. I'm gonna give you £1,000 from Shaykh Shafiur Rahman's pocket. Okay. If you can If you can answer this question, I'll give you £1,000 right now. And this is a question. This question appeared on the literacy test. In other words, white people didn't have to take a test. You come to vote. You don't have to take no test, but black people had to take a test. And this was the question. Wallahi, if you get it right, I give you £1,000 right now. Are you ready?
That takes the pressure off me because you're not expecting me to answer it. So alhamdulillah, fire away.
You will not answer. No one has ever answered the question. You will not answer. Okay, this is the question. Real question. How many bubbles in a bar of soap?
Yeah.
Where's the answer? What's the answer?
Exactly.
How many bubbles in a bar of soap? How many?
Don't know. How many?
Of course, nobody knows. And that's the point. The question was, you had to recite the Constitution of the United States of America by heart. So these were the things that stopped black people from voting. And why did they want to stop black people from voting? Because it would give them some power. So what we have here is some disparity between black people and white people in our country. And I'm just going to give you just one example. I'm a researcher. I love to research. If you give me a choice to give a speech or to research, I would rather research, right? So I wanted to research the life expectancy. And so I study all the countries' life expectancy. And when you look at the life expectancy of the United States of America, we're 45th, meaning there's 44 countries that have a higher life expectancy than the United States. And the average life expectancy in the United States is 78.6 years, 78.6 years. UK is something similar, but that figure is misleading. So while that's 45th on the list of all the countries, but if you ask the question, what's the life expectancy of a black man in the United States? The life expectancy of a black man in the United States is 71.5 years. So if they were a country, they would be 111th. And everything, whatever category you want to use between blacks and white is difference of night and day, whether it's in economy, whether it's in prison, whether it's in education, all of those things. So you have this condition. In addition to that, you have police brutality. Every black person that I know have an incident with the police, everyone. I give you one example with me, right? I'm a student at New York University, a freshman, and one afternoon I'm making a determination of whether I'm going to class or not, because there was going to be a strike, there's going to be a demonstration. So I'm thinking either I'm going to go to class or I'm going to go home. So I'm standing in front of my building from my school, and a policeman comes, a white policeman, and says, "Move on." I said, "Sir, I'm a student here." He said, "I told you to move on." And because I hesitated, 5 police came and they arrested me and took me to the precinct. When I got to the precinct, remember now, I'm like 18 years old. I go to the precinct, I sit down, they handcuff me and take off the handcuff. One policeman takes out a gun and he puts it on the desk and he said, "Would you like to go for that?" Every black, I teach my son, if they stop you, be cooperative, because I know my son, he give them back talk. So black people know you can't say nothing to a white police officer because you can wind up dead. So what happened, this particular case, the same thing that happened in 1965, when the police were brutalizing these black people who were protesting, protesting, and they were doing it, peacefully. The police beat them up, but it was caught on camera. And because it was caught on camera and put on TV, everybody was talking about it. 2 days later, Martin Luther King Jr. came. It wasn't 600 people, it was 2,500 people. It's called, and first Sunday was called Bloody Sunday. And Tuesday was called Turnaround Tuesday because the judge didn't give them the right to march. So they call it Turnaround Tuesday. March 25th, now they have permission to march. It's not 600 people. It's not 2,500 people. 25,000 100,000 people. And Martin Luther King Jr., you heard of him, right?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yeah.
You know what, Imam, you know what the name of his speech was? The name of his speech was, how long, not long. He said, I know everybody's asking the question, how long must we continue doing this? How long? Not long. That was his speech. That was 55 years ago. Now we have the same problem. This time, George Floyd, it was caught on camera. You see, seeing is believing. I give you one example, Sheikh. You know the very famous hadith, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, says that Allah has angels, and the angels, they go about seeing what the slaves of Allah is doing, and they go to Allah to give a report to Allah. Allah don't need that, but when Allah asks a question, he asks a question to teach us a lesson. He said to the angels, what are my slaves saying? They're saying, يقولون سبحان الله الحمد لله Allahu Akbar la ilaha illallah. Allah asks the angels, how ra'awni? Do they see me? يقولون لا ما رأوك يا رب. They don't see you. كيف لو رأوني? Allah said, what if they saw me? Oh, if they saw you, they'd be stronger in their worship to you. They will make more takbir to you, because seeing is believing. And then Allah asks the question, what are they asking for? They're asking for Jannah. Allah said, do they see the Jannah? No, they don't see Jannah. What if they saw it? Oh, if they saw it, they would be more, they would love it more. So what happens, people hear about, what they do to black people, but when you see it, everybody's outraged. I don't know anyone who's not outraged. So that began the process. So my recommendation is that we educate ourselves, as Muslims and other people, to learn a little bit about the history, any history, but especially right now the history of African Americans. I think that's important. And we're going to learn that Black lives do matter. And it has not mattered for so many years.
Brother Junaid.
Yes.
Can I just ask quickly something, a follow on that?
Please,
Imam Siraj,
please say.
You mentioned about because everybody saw this, it kind of struck a chord with much more people. People are coming out on the streets all over the world, not just in America.
Of course.
But some people are asking the question, like a lot of people are saying, this is the turning point. This is a critical juncture in the travel or the journey of Black America, etc. But somebody was saying, we've seen this before. We've seen this before. Black people being killed, demonstrations, protesters coming out in their thousands. And the same in the UK, we've seen several incidences. There's a lot of heat the day after, and then slowly dies down. Do you think this incident, this event is any different? Is there going to be a lasting change from this?
Imam, you asked a great question. My answer is twofold. Number one, I told you about 1965. Do you know what happened as a result of those demonstrations? Because there were a lot of protests and demonstrations. 1965, Lyndon Johnson, the president of the United States of America, in August 1965, signed the bill, Voting Rights Bill of 1965. That changed things, right? So those laws were changed and it was enforced. So something happened. Something is going to happen. There's going to be some reform, police reform. Already it's happening right now. People talking about it. But Sheikh, you're right. You make a really good point, because the issue now is, okay, after this, all of these protests, what's going to happen, right? You're having marches and demonstrations. The answer is, what do you want it to happen? The people, what do you want to happen, and what are you going to do about it? Sheikh, I'm going to show you something. In 19, just give me a second. I want to get something for you. I'm going to read this for you. Things are changing. There's no question about it. One of the about 20 years ago, Muslims were asking the question, are we permitted to vote?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And the Sheikh, right now, not many people are asking, not many Muslims are asking, can we vote?
Mm.
The question is, you know, there's some, you know, there's something that we can do voting. I'm looking for something. Just give me 1 second. You can have political change, and you can change people, presidents, governors, judges, and things like that with political action. So that's number one. So is it different? Yes, I've never seen it like this before. We've seen people protesting before, demonstrating, never like this. And usually it's most African American people. But now when you look, you see people, many white European Americans, right? You see Asians, you see black and brown and red and yellow, you see all these people. So it may signal that there can be a change if we don't allow it to die. And you're right, Sheikh, you're 100% right, because that's the history. People say, okay, yeah, I've seen this before, here we go again. But I think this is a little bit different. And most people I talk to, activists, think that this is a little bit different. If we see, because we learn, you know, there's no real wisdom without experience. We learn, okay, I've seen it before, I've participated myself, here we go again. This seems a little bit different.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
That's good to know, because that's one of the things that we see. And for Muslims, whenever we see an incident, a crisis in the community, the question that we should always be asking, what should be our response? How do we respond to this? And that's the question I want to ask you, Imam Siraj. And I think it's good to be quite explicit with this. There's a lot of discussion about the Black Lives Movement. Is this something that Muslims should be supporting, or, you know, does that take the focus away from all lives, and we should be calling for, you know, all lives matter movement, and not really be on this agenda? What's your response to this particular way of thinking, and also what's your advice to the Muslim in terms of how we should partake in this kind of during this crisis, when we're seeing so much happening in
Junaid, it's a great question. It's a great question. It's a great question, right? But let me say a couple of things, right? I think we have to be careful when we speak to people, especially African Americans, right? So when a Black person say, you know, Black Lives Matter, if you say all lives matter, it's true. No one can argue that. But it's almost an insult to Black people, because when Black people say Black Lives Matter, it's a summary of what they really mean. What they're saying is that Black lives matter too. You all act like Black lives don't matter. Black lives matter. So of course all lives matter. Of course, that's the first point. And the second point, which is really great, and I talk to Muslims about our agenda. I remember we started our masjid 39 years ago. And when we started, it was 25 of us, African Americans, all of us African Americans, 25 years ago. I'm sorry, 39 years ago. And every demonstration there was, we were there. I was there. And, you know, you've heard of Reverend Sharpton. I was with Reverend Sharpton and all the others. We always demonstrated. But we also, Muslims, my community, any issue there was with Muslims, Bosnia, Syria, Palestine, we always there. We always participated. So we always participated, right? But what happened, I found myself so much involved in all these demonstrations, I thought I had to scale back a little bit. Now my community, on an average Juma, we have 1,300 people. And the percentage of African Americans in my masjid may be 20%, 25% most. So what we have to do is there must be a rationale in everything we do. There has to be a rationale, right? Because today is Black Lives Matter. Next day is going to be some immigrants. Next day is going to be the Chinese Muslims. It's going to be the Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims. They're going to be the Muslims in Syria and in Yemen and in Palestine. There's always going to be issues, right? So therefore, we have to make a rationale. What are we going to do? And this is our rationale. Whoever sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. And that's what our call is. It's that, you know, this is not right. It's not right what they're doing. So we have to make a decision to what degree we're going to participate. How will we participate? And does it fit our agenda? And yes, if we have to, we're called upon to stand up for justice. This is what we're supposed to do. One of the names of Allah is He's the just one. So therefore, we see this injustice. We want to do something about it, and we have to pick and choose. At what point we're going to involve ourselves, to what degree. I tell the people in our community and part of the Majlis Shura, yes, you want to demonstrate with them, you should, but you have to protect yourself. And if you feel that you can do it, you know, in the midst of this this COVID-19, then do it, but do it cautiously. So yes, the small answer is yes, we should do something, but it's a very, very, very big issue. Now, I'm going to come to the root of the problem that I see it. You got a couple minutes?
Yes, absolutely.
You have a couple?
Yeah.
You sure? You're not going to stop me?
No.
I got to say this is really important.
No, Bismillah.
All right. There's a brother in my community. He told me one day, he said, Imam, I take 29 different medications a day. 29 different medications a day. And this medicine that he takes, these pills that he takes, isn't to cure him. No, it's not to cure him. What it does, you know, Bernie Sanders, he ran for president of the United States.
Yeah.
And he had a heart attack last year. And he said, I should have paid more attention to my symptoms. I should have paid more attention to my symptoms. And we find out that many people, they deal with symptoms and not the cure. Inshallah, there's going to be a cure for COVID-19 for sure. Because the Prophet said, there's no disease without a cure. There's going to be a cure. Inshallah, we'll find the cure, right? But when a man came to the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, complaining of his brother's stomach, the Prophet said, Isqihi asalin, give him honey. Why? Because honey is a shafa', honey is a cure. So what happens is that what we do is we deal with symptoms and not dealing with the root of the problem. Justice for Black people is a symptom. Let me tell you what, let me give an example how Muslims have to think clearly on what we're going to do. Are we going to deal with the symptom, or are we going to deal with the root of the problem? I'll give you one example. I don't know about UK, but we have a big drug problem in America. You have a big drug problem there?
Yeah.
Yes, especially in town hamlets and East London. Yeah.
Okay. Let me give an example. We have in 1 year, 70,000 people died of overdose. 70,000 died of overdose. 47,000 people commit suicide in my country. 480,000 Americans die a year as a result of smoking cigarettes. 41,000 Americans die every year secondhand smoke, which means they don't smoke, but other people smoke and they die. Now, Islam goes to the root. If you want to start dealing with drug addiction, it's a big problem. It's a major problem. But what did Islam do? And this is to me the lesson, how we deal with the Black Lives Matter and justice. You got to go to the root of the problem. Let me give an example. When the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, started teaching the people, they had a problem with intoxicants. But notice, 13 years, the first 13 years in Mecca, Allah never mentioned intoxicants once in the Quran. It wasn't until the 4th year after Hijrah, Allah mentioned intoxicants for the first time. And consider this, it wasn't Allah who initiated the conversation. Yas'alunaka an al-khamr wa maysir. Ya Muhammad, they're asking you about intoxicants. I'm not talking about it. They're asking you. Why are they asking you? Because there's something in the teaching that makes you feel something. Ummah is feeling something, and the believers are feeling something. And then ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la taqrabu as-salata wa antum sukara hatta ta'lamu ma taqulun. Now then Allah reveals, don't approach salat while you're intoxicated. Still, it's not haram. It's not haram yet. And then finally Allah reveals, fajtanibuhu la'allakum tuflihun. Leave it alone. And it is said, Anas ibn Malik, he was serving Sahaba with alcohol, and they heard somebody outside, and go check who it is. It's a man saying that khamra, alcohol, intoxicants has been prohibited. Immediately, they started pouring down the wine in the streets of Medina. Why? Because the preparation was made. Allah dealt with the root of the problem. And the root of the problem isn't thou shalt not drink alcohol. You see, most Muslims take the 10 Commandments approach. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not commit, covet thy neighbors, thou shalt not do. But that's not the way Allah did it. He didn't do it that way. He didn't say, don't do this, don't do that. What he did, he went to the root. And this is the root. Wallahi, this is the root. Will solve all of the problems. Wallahi, this is the root. The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, was with his companion Mu'adh bin Jabal. Young man behind the donkey. And the Prophet said, Ya Mu'adh, ma haqqullah ala ibadi wa ma haqqu ibadi ala Allah. Ya Mu'adh, do you know what Allah's right over his slaves is? And the right of the slave over Allah? Allah wa Rasul a'lam. Allah and his messenger know best. Inna haqqallah ala ibadi an ya'buduhu wa la yusriku bihi shay'an. It is Allah's right to be worshipped and no one be worshipped besides him. And it is the right of his slave. If they do that, Allah don't punish them. You see, you listen, and people think that they're better. I'm better than you. I'm a black man. I'm better than you. But for me, as a Muslim, alhamdulillah, Sheikh, Imam, I have many identities. I'm an Aswad. I'm a black man. And you know what? I like being a black man. Why? It's Allah who created you in the womb as he pleased. If Allah pleased to make me a black man, why should I be ashamed to be a black man and a white man or a brown man or a yellow man? Because I know in Allah Ta'ala, لا ينظروا إلى أسامكم ولا إلى صوركم ولكن ينظروا إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. Allah doesn't look at your bodies nor your forms. He look at your heart and your deeds. I know there will not be one black person in Jannah because they're black. There will not be one white person in hell because they're white. No, it's based on our deeds. And if you want to be better than someone, be better than with them in righteousness and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the key to everything, what did Allah say? Some sisters came to me. I did a program years ago, and a Muslim program, and 3 sisters came to me after the program. They looked about college age. And they said, Imam Siraj, they weren't wearing hijab. 3 young sisters not wearing hijab. They said, Imam, we want you to show us from the Quran why we should cover. We don't want no hadith. Show us from Quran why we should cover. That's easy. But rather than that, I asked them this question. I said, sisters, do you pray? They said, no, Imam, we don't pray. I said, do you find in Quran you should pray? They said, yeah, many verses. I said, if you find many verses that you should pray and you're not praying, what makes you think if I show you one verse from Quran that you should cover, you start covering? You see, because Imam, their problem isn't covering. So the father and mother, you gotta cover, you gotta cover, you gotta cover. Covering isn't their problem. So they cover, they leave the house, they cover. In one block, they take off the hijab. Why? Because you're not dealing with the problem. I don't talk about hijab. I talk about the relationship with Allah. Once they rectify the relationship with Allah, Allah asks you to cover, you're going to cover. When the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, was given the commandment from Allah, 50 prayers a day, فَرَجَعْتُ بِذَلِكَ حَتَّى مَرَاتُ عَلَى مُوسَى, and I returned with it. He's not arguing with Allah. 50 prayers a day. He's going to do it until he met Musa. What did Allah ask you? He said, 50 prayers a day. فَرَجِتْ إِلَى رَبِّكَ فَإِنَّ أُمَّتَكَ لَا تُطِيقُ ذَلِكَ. Go back to your Lord. Your people can't do that. They can't. So he goes back and forth, back and forth. Allah finally said 5. And Musa says, فَرَجِتْ إِلَى رَبِّكَ فَإِنَّ أُمَّتَكَ لَا تُطِيقُ that. Go back to your Lord. Your people can't do 5 prayers a day. Was Moses right? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But the point that I'm making, this is my point, is that the brotherhood of Islam, you know, the racism, are there some Muslim who are racist? I'm sure they are. But in Islam, there's no racism there.
But that's. I was actually going to ask you and Sheikh Shafi this question that we often quote many verses of the Quran and refer to many examples from the teachings of Islam to say that Islam's got nothing to do with racism, and we often see that as a problem over there. It's not a problem within the Muslim community. But it seems that actually during those kind of incidences, when this discussion happens, there is a lot of soul searching and introspection that takes place within the Muslim community as well. And we realize that actually, yes, Islam has no place for racism, but within the Muslim community, racism still seems to be quite widespread within communities, within tribalism and so on and so forth. So that is still a reality, wouldn't you say, Sheikh Shafi, while we give Imam Siraj a little break?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, racism is universal. It doesn't belong to white people, black people, Asians. It's universal. Every human being has the capacity and the potential to look down on others because they're different, because they're of a different race, caste, or country, or whatever. So without a doubt, Islam, of course, is perfect. Islam is perfect. The Muslims are as close to perfection as they are close to Islam. The further they are
behind that, Imam Siraj and Sheikh Shafi, that we say Islam is perfect, there's no racism, and that kind of pushes away that problem from the Muslim community.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. So Islam is not the issue. The problem is the Muslim community, the practice, the people, right? So obviously there's racism is rife within our communities. I can't speak for different nationalities, but the Asian community, Indian subcontinent, we have a deep historical relationship with racism, colorism, as they call it, the preference of light skin over dark skin. This is embedded in our history, the caste system, etc. So it definitely exists, and we have to root it out. And it is soul searching. It's about looking into our own behavior, action, language, re-educating ourselves, being sensitive, and ensuring that we don't perpetuate the same very thing that people are fighting against, without a doubt.
Yeah. Let me just quickly take a few comments that have been coming in. Matir Rahman Chowdhury says, Assalamu alaikum to Imam Siraj. He remembers you when you first came to LSE, London School of Economics, in the 90s. So he gives his salam. Hussein Shifa says, I was inspired by Imam Siraj Wahhaj. Muhammad Amin says, how's Imam's health these days?
Very good. Alhamdulillah. But I want to say something. What Imam Shafi said, I know you want to ask me questions, man. I know you're trying to get rid of me. I know you're trying to get rid of me.
No.
I want to get rid of me. I know you got a lot of...
Not at all.
Let me tell you something that I think is, we have to make a distinction, right? Between a person's prejudice, right? And a person's preference, right? Like, compared to a person like institutionalized racism, like, I'm saying that you control the lives of a person. Like Martin Luther King said, he who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front. Now, it's if you don't like me as an individual, I don't like you because you're black. Okay, fine, right? But you not liking me as an individual because I'm black is not going to get me arrested. It's not going to stop me from getting a job. But when you have power over me, and you're a white policeman over me, and you can kill me, then that's a major difference. The other point I want to make, Junaid, there is a store that I go to, a Muslim store in my neighborhood, and I've been going there for years. And one day I went in there. The first time I saw a sign that I never saw before. It says no alcohol sold here. And I was very, very happy. It's a Muslim store because every Muslim store that I know, every Muslim store in New York City, except a few exceptions, they sell alcohol. Is alcohol permitted? No. Right? So when I saw this sign, no alcohol sold here, I was very happy. And then I looked carefully. There were some small things. It says no alcohol sold here on Sundays before 2 p.m. So what am I saying? Is drinking alcohol permitted? No. Are there Muslims who drink alcohol? I'm sure they are. Are we allowed to take intoxicants? Of course not. A man during the time of the Prophet, be upon him, named Abdullah, always getting drunk. So I agree. I don't think it's an excuse by saying perfect Islam, imperfect Muslims. I think that's very valid. So we have to continue. But I got some good news for you. I got some good news for you. This generation here of Muslims is different. I know so many African American Muslims, Black Muslims, who go to school with Muslim girls from the subcontinent. Many of them want to get married. And their parents say, no, you can't do that. No. But this generation here is different. And I want you to consider when the children of Israel was given the commandment to go to the Holy Land, and they refused to do it, and they wandered in the desert for 40 years. They wandered for 40 years, and that meant that generation died out. Muslims, we have some problems, and we have to deal with the internal contradictions. There's no question about that. But I think it's important that the people understand what our traditions say.
Imam Siraj, just following on your previous beautiful kind of answer, the long answer about Islam being the solution, it being the proper diagnosis to the problem. What does that say in terms, because I'm not hearing much of that. What I'm hearing in America in the cross-faith discussions is about justice, equality, not much about faith, but the equality and justice that must be fought for, the civil rights movement, the social justice movement, critical race theory, because it's a perpetual structural racism. The white man, the oppressor, the system is oppressive, we're the oppressed. And it's a kind of infinity war, if you like. It's never going to change. And therefore, we must consistently, perpetually fight the system. But you seem to be saying, no, that's the symptom. This is the solution. How does that speak to non-Muslims in this fight?
I am glad you asked the question. I'm so happy you asked the question. Can I be honest with you, perfectly honest with you? I think the Muslims in general have dropped the ball. We have dropped the ball. See, because what we do is that, there's a lot of fires, and we're running out trying to put our fires and deal with the issue, right? And when you look at the ummah, the best ummah, no Muslim would argue. خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of my ummah, my generation. No one can argue that. See, what was that generation? What did that generation look like? What did that generation look like? All of them were converts. All of them were converts. Every one of them. Consider this. Who was I asked you, you have Muslim parents, right?
Yeah.
You have Muslim grandparents, right?
Yeah.
I'm the first Muslim. I'm the first generation Muslim. I had nobody in my family. I'm the first one, alhamdulillah. Now I have children, Muslim. I have grandchildren that are Muslims. So I'm the first generation. When you look at the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, they were all converts. None of them had Muslim parents. Can I tell you the first one who had a Muslim parents? Look at the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, right? It goes like this. And Aisha, al-Mu'mineen, from Aisha, the mother of the believers. Why? Allah says, and the wives of the Prophet are mothers. But when you look at the history of the hadith, look what it says. And Aisha, al-Mu'mineen, Ummi Abdullah. Ummi Abdullah, Aisha had no children. What do you mean the mother of Abdullah? Because her sister Asma had a baby named Abdullah ibn Zubair. He was the first Muslim baby born in the Ummah. So we do da'wah. In our community, we do da'wah. To me, Muslim communities have lost that major impetus of da'wah. So in the early Ummah of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, number one, massive da'wah. Go from Abu Bakr and Umar and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf and Sa'd ibn Rabi, all of them, and they did da'wah. That was the job, man. We don't do no dawah. We don't spend no money for no dawah. We don't call people to what we're supposed to be calling the people to. So we running around putting out fires. We run around giving people 29 different medications. But I'm saying to you that I have rededicated myself. As much dawah as I do more now. You see, because if an organization called Black Lives Matter, they go there and they have an agenda and they're doing their agenda. So what about my agenda? So two things I will show you about the best ummah. Number one, they were converts. You want to use another word, whatever I know some will say, oh, Prophet wasn't no convert. Okay, I got it. But you know, Sheikh, you know the other thing is, that first ummah, that model, many of them were young. They were young. You could say, maybe even, I don't know to say majority, I don't know numbers like that, but I know that some of the most prominent Muslims are what a youth. So what happened? We've seen something different happening now. Youth are leaving the masjid. Just like the church and the synagogue. The youth left the church and the synagogue. Why? Because, you know, the youth in many masjids is a footnote. But now, my community, you know, we have a youth director. Every masjid should have a youth director. You have to bring them back. Sheikh, there's a masjid in Detroit, Michigan. They call it the oldest masjid in Detroit. That term, oldest masjid, has two meanings. Number one, it means it's the first masjid. It's the first masjid, and it is. But oldest masjid could also mean literally the oldest masjid. Sheikh, that masjid, I know that masjid. The average age of the participant in that masjid is 80 years old.
Subhanallah.
Where's the youth? Subhanallah, where's the youth? And I'm looking around. I go around when I go to the masjids. I look for the converts and I look for the youth. And I'm saying, I agree with you, Sheikh. I'm with you 100%. I think that if we spend more time on dawah and letting people understand the essence of this beautiful faith, we'll make a difference. And that's what I'm doing now, Sheikh. I'm focusing more ever than I did before on dawah.
MashaAllah, you were always inspirational in da'wah, and you still are, MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
And I think you know, we said, alhamdulillah, you've been able to dedicate consistently your time and your effort in the field of da'wah. So that was one of the other areas that we wanted to kind of explore with you. A lot of people listening. I'm getting a lot of comments of people who know you from the time that they were inspired to get involved in da'wah. And you know, when you get a chance, please, you know, read through some of those comments. What's your advice to the people that are listening, to the audience, in terms of engaging and dedicating to this work of da'wah? Because one of the things that we see is that people are now busier with family, with their professional life, with you know, personal duties and responsibilities. Often it's very, very difficult to commit and dedicate to the field of da'wah in the way that you have inspired and you have demonstrated that you know, this is possible and it's the duty and responsibility that Muslims should be doing. So what's your advice in terms of, you know, calling people to engage in this work of da'wah?
Junaid, every day, I have seen over the years, every day, the average Muslim have 2 or 3 different opportunities to give da'wah in a very limited way. And I give an example. I was on a plane one day, and the plane had landed, and people were getting out. And I noticed there was an elderly white woman. She was standing there next to her seat. And I went to her and said, "Madam, do you need help?" She said, "Yes, my luggage. Can you help me get my luggage on the overhead?" So I went and pulled it down. And I said, "Would you like for me to take it out of the plane for you?" She said, "No, thank you so much." Right? You should have seen her face. "Thank you so much." People were ignoring her. So I walk off the plane, and a young white woman said to me, says, "Sir, I saw what you did. I saw what you did, and I want to thank you." And you know what? I didn't do that like to get brownie points. You know what I'm saying? Hey, look, I'm a Muslim. Look what I did. No, I did it because this is who we are. This is who we are. But you will find out every day you get an opportunity to da'wah. I'll give you another point. You ever read a book and somebody like behind you reading what you're reading. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like people who do that. I'm reading. Don't be looking at what I'm reading, right? But one day I'm on a plane and I'm reading some Islamic literature, and the guy next to me was trying to look. So what I did, I kind of turned around to let him see. He said to me, he says, is that Islam? I said, yes, sir. I railed him in, and we started talking about Islam. Don't sit next to me on a plane. Don't you sit next to me on a plane, because I may start talking to you in a natural way, not intrusive, but you will find out there are ways that you can engage the people, you know, everybody, you know, whatever time you have. Maybe you can write a post, write something, write an article, talk to somebody, you know. So I think that we have to start rethinking that this is an objective of ours. This is what we do. This is what we're all about. And we will see people will come, they come running to Islam. I mean, we have open house in our masjid. And 7 people take shahada in an open house. I mean, brother you talked in a prison, 25 people take shahada. So this happens all the time. So just make it as a priority and you will see. And I think what happens is people feel nervous about it. You know, they feel inadequate. But think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a couple of verses from Quran. He didn't have the whole Quran at the time. And whatever little bit he had, he went giving it. That's our job. That's our job. This is what we ashamed and we're afraid. Everybody else, they're not afraid. That's what they do. Black Lives Matter. They have an agenda. One day you should look and see the agenda of Black Lives Matter. That movement, they got an agenda. They got an entire agenda. We got an agenda too. And the agenda for us is that we trying to help the people. We're trying to make life better for everyone. That's to their advantage. You know, everybody take advantage of these youngsters. Do you know that what's the legal age of smoking cigarettes in UK? What's the legal age?
16, I think.
16, I think.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Is that high?
16? And then that's very low. In the United States, it's 18. In the United States, you can't buy cigarettes until you come to 18 years old. But my point that I'm making, that 90%
on this, just in case it's not absolutely correct, but Shaykh Shafiur.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah. My point,
yeah,
90% of the cigarette smokers in the United States start before the age of 18. 90%. Okay. So what am I saying? There's somebody targeting these people. You're not born designed to smoke cigarettes. That's number one. Number two, what's the legal age for drinking alcohol? UK. Legal age.
It's 18. I think it's 18.
So I've just got a message. Someone just commented, 1st of October 2007, the legal age for the purchase of tobacco in England and Wales was raised from 16 to 18. So it was 16.
Okay.
It's not been raised to 18.
Okay. Alcohol, what's the legal age, you say?
I'm pretty sure it's 18.
In the United States, it's 21, right? 21 is the legal age of drinking alcohol in the United States. You can't sell it you go to jail for selling alcohol to a person, right, under 21. But the fact of the matter that the alcohol industry depends on underage drinkers for the industry. 20-something% of the alcohol sold in the United States is sold to underage drinkers. What's my point? There are people targeting the youth. They're going to exploit them. We're targeting people to help them. Malcolm X, look at Malcolm X. He goes to prison. Malcolm X, you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, what he used to do and drugs and all the things. He becomes Muslim. His life has changed. He changed the lives of a lot of people.
MashaAllah. Imam Siraj, one of the things that we used to say all the time when we used to listen to your talks, attend your lectures in the 90s and in the early 2000s is, you know, there's never a lecture of Imam Siraj Wahhaj that is complete unless there's a story of his travel and something in the airplane or the airport. So alhamdulillah, we managed to get that today as well in this kind of show. Imam Imam Siraj, you were kind of very successful and you were recognized for your efforts in fighting drugs and crime in New York. You know, this was something that was very well kind of known because of the way you transformed that community. And you said you got a youth director in your masjid as well. What would be your advice in terms of what's that strategy that we need to take in order to reach out to the youth?
I think the main thing, Junaid, is that to show that we care. A couple of years ago, I was in the West Coast and I went to a hotel called Doubletree Hotel. And by the way, I don't know, you have Doubletree there in UK? Doubletree Hotel?
Not that well known. No, I'm not come across it.
No. Well, the Doubletree Hotel is famous for their cookies. They have, you know, when you give you some of these cookies, wallahi, the best cookies in the world. And but anyway, I went to my room. It's in California, and every room had a card, and the card said, "When you care, it shows. When you care, it shows." And I would argue, when you don't care, it shows. You see, the Muslim youth have been neglected. Most masjids, they're neglected, and we don't pay a lot of attention to them, and then they leave. When I used to go to programs in Washington D.C., there was some young Muslims, all teenage ages. They would come to my program, and then after the program, I don't care how late it was, they would take me to a Muslim restaurant. We would hang out together. I talked to them, I engaged them. So I loved them. They loved me, and only because I cared about them, right? One of the brothers, his name is Ali. He moved to California. This is Washington, D.C. He moved to California. And recently he came to visit me. And he said, "Imam, I hate going to the masjid, especially the Jummah prayer." I said, "Why, Ali?" He said, "Because they don't relate to me. It doesn't relate." And so a lot of times when the youth go to the masjid, it's like the khatib, they're not speaking to them. They're not speaking their language. They don't hang out with them. I play basketball with them. Yeah, I still play basketball. You know what basketball is, Junaid? You know what that is?
Yeah.
You know how to play that? No, you can't play that. You play soccer. I'm sorry. You play
football.
I'm sorry. Football. Sheikh, you play basketball?
No, I don't.
No, right?
Soccer, football.
Okay. Well, soccer. Okay, good. Let me tell you something. I still play it. And when I go to the cities, I play the shabab. I still play. I still hang out with them. But my point is, they got to see, man, that you care, and you got to talk their language. You got to talk their language. You got to relate to them. And I'm saying we just don't put the energy. We don't put the time. We don't not on a consistent level. So we have to do that. I think it's critical, because who we gonna hand the baton to? Soon our masjid will be like that masjid in Detroit. But as person is 80 years old, we don't want to be like that. We want to keep on growing and keep on developing.
Imam Siraj, you mentioned that people don't engage much in da'wah anymore. But over the last, say, 10, 15 years, there's been this huge explosion in growth in what some people call the Islam industry. Lots of conferences, institutes, celebrity speakers. There's a big kind of momentum there. But I guess a lot of people attend those things or listen to talks on YouTube or online. In other words, a lot of people are consumers of Islam, audience members of Islam, but not many doing the actual work like it used to be done in maybe in the late 80s and the 90s, where dawah and going out there in terms of people to people, changing your communities, etc. Why do you think that shift happened?
Sheikh, I'm not sure, but I do know this, that we have to get back to it. You know, we saw something that worked, as you said rightly, right? And we have to ask ourselves the question, how did we get off it? What went wrong? Because Islam it's a whole, it's not just listening to a lecture, but it's a whole routine. It's coming to the masjid. You know, in the masjids, subhanAllah, at Fajr prayer, there's a brother who's the second in charge of security. His name is Khalil. And you know what I look for every morning? He uses 3 to Fajr. And I talk to them, you know, every day. And he says, yeah, Imam, what I do after the prayer, I take them for breakfast. That's part of, that's part of what we do. So I went in my pocket and I gave them some money. I said, listen, I want to put this in the breakfast, pot. So when you see them coming to the masjid, right, it's not just elderly coming to the masjid, but it's the youth. We have different programs. And I think, Sheikh, is a matter of making it a priority. There's an imam, African-American imam in Harlem, Imam Talib, a good friend of mine. He was invited by an immigrant community to their national organizational meeting. And they wanted him to, they were doing. And so they wrote on the board 10 priorities for this immigrant organization, number 1 to 10. And the 1 was the most important priority. 10 was the least. And they said, Imam Talib, what do you think about that? He said, it's interesting. He said, what you have as priority number 1 is priority number 10 in my community. And what you have as priority number 10 is priority number 1 in my community. So it's a matter of priority. It's a matter of us, number 1, getting our priority right, and then creating a program to help us to bring about that priority. I think we lost focus. We just lost focus. So we got to get back to that. We got to get the youth back to the masjid, and you got to make it. Listen, the Prophet did it, peace and blessing be upon him. Some Sahaba was 10, 12 years old. 10, 12 years old when they became Muslim. I mean, a lot of them, Anas ibn Malik, 10 years old. His mother brings him to the Prophet to serve the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. He said, I served the Prophet for 10 years. He never said uff to me. Aisha radiallahu anha, young. Umar ibn Abdullah ibn Umar, all of these young, they're young. Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas, they're young. I mean, they're unbelievably young. So what happened? We got away from that, And I'm not sure if it's the school. Sheikh, 87% of the population in the United States go to what we call public school. I don't know if you call it state school, whatever.
We call it state school, yeah.
Okay, good. And 7% go to private school, and 3% they go to homeschooling. So what happens? I think what happens when education became mandatory, maybe our children go into public school. Now, according to Columbia University study, they say 10% of the students in New York City of the Muslims of the school, 10% of Muslims. So when you think about that, 5% of the Muslims go to private school. That means 95% of Muslims go to public school. What's happening? So in those days, they were trained by the Muslims. So we got to just try to figure it out. We got to figure it out. It's a huge issue. We should put it on our agenda, how to bring the youth back to the masjid.
Inshallah. And Shaykh Shafi is a trustee of one of the largest masjids in Europe. So inshallah, he'll take that message on board, his board, inshallah. And already the team is doing some great work at the East London Mosque and the London Muslim Centre.
Oh, yeah.
So, mashallah, that can be taken forward. Unfortunately, we're coming towards the end of the show. And I've not had the chance.
I don't know. No. I don't want to.
No, we don't want to end it either. And I've hardly asked any of the questions that I had initially planned to ask. So we will definitely need to have Imam Siraj back in one of the shows again.
Definitely.
But as we kind of
Can I come in person?
Absolutely. Yes.
Even better.
That is over. Your invitation from Faith Inspire is open, inshallah, and we would love to host you here in the UK, inshallah. This show is brought to is all arranged by Faith Inspire, and one of the things that Faith Inspire aims to do is inspire individuals to become change makers in society. So I take this role of bringing positive change and contributing to society, giving back to society in whichever way they can. So what would be your, as a closing remarks, in terms of your advice to our listeners who want to be change makers? What would be your advice to them?
You know what Martin Luther King Jr. said? He said, every one of you are either a hammer or an anvil. And what that means, he said, either you will shape the society or be shaped by the society. we have to make a decision as Muslims that we're going to be hammers, you know, and it has to be with our faith, our confidence. I feel that honestly, Muslims have lost confidence. We lost confidence in ourselves. And like with me, I'm 100% sure that Islam is the right way for humanity. Right now, I look at what's going on, COVID-19, I look at what's going on with Black people being oppressed and all of that, and I come with the conclusion, Islam is the answer. We have to do everything that we can. We need a few good men and women to make a difference. And we have to put in our heart that, you know what, I you know, really honestly, Junaid, I really love people. Honestly, I really love people. And I remember the Prophet, this is my last word. This is my last word I'm gonna say. He gave us a litmus test of leadership. He said, أحب خيار أعمتكم الذين تحبونهم ويحبونكم وتصلون عليهم ويصلون عليكم. The best of your leaders are those whom you love and they love you. You pray for them and they pray for you. And the worst of your leaders are those whom you hate and they hate you. You curse them and they curse you. So you got to love the people. You can't call the people that you don't love them. You don't care about them. And I honestly care about the people. And I would say to the Muslims, care about all the people. Care about the Black people, the yellow people, the men and the women, and all the people. You know what? Even those people have weaknesses. I remember the Prophet said that there was a prophet beaten so much by his people that he began to bleed. He wiped the blood from his face and Allahumma ikfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Allah, forgive my people because they don't know. These people, they don't know. So let's teach them. Those are my closing remarks, inshallah.
Barakallah khair, and Imam Siraj, and apologies to all our viewers for not being able to take all your questions or comments, but I think one comment that nicely summarizes and follows on from what Imam Siraj has just said is from Darren Mack, who says that it's such an honor for all involved with Faith Inspire and everyone else who's listening to have the company of Imam Siraj, truly a giant in our ummah, and love you, Sheikh. So the people love you. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan, Imam Siraj. It's been such an honor to have you.
Jazakallah khair, Imam Siraj. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Imam.
Barakallahu feek.
Good to see you. May Allah continue to bless you. I make dua for you and your family and the community.
Iyakum wa iyakum. Ameen. Ameen.
Thank you very much to all our audience for listening. And inshallah, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time for another episode of Faith Unlocked. And hopefully, again, in one of the future shows, we'll have Imam Siraj Wahhaj. Jazakumullah khairan. Stay safe and keep us safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.